Taiwan's passport ranked 31st strongest in world. South Africa says Putin to stay away from BRICS summit. Saudi Arabia and Turkey mediate talks to return Ukrainian children. U.S. suspends Wuhan Institute funds over COVID stonewalling. Kissinger meets China defense chief in Beijing. India and Indonesia plan local currency trade featuring fast payments links. Colombia landslide kills 15 and blocks major highway. Hong Kong Mulls exempting TV shows from impartiality requirement.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It's Thursday, July 20th, and here are your top stories. Taiwan News reported that the latest passport index by British consulting firm Henley & Partners ranked Taiwan as having the 31st most powerful passport globally in terms of the number of countries that provide its holders visa-free access. The Henley Passport Index ranks 199 passports based on the extent their holders can access 227 travel destinations without a prior visa. In its third quarter listing for 2023, Taiwan ranked 31st. With access to 144 countries, rising one spot from its ranking of 32nd in the second quarter.
Taiwan News said Singapore took first place in the world, with visa-exempt status for 192 countries, followed by Germany, Italy, and Spain, which tied for second. Taiwan ranks 9th in Asia behind Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong, Brunei, and Israel. On the other hand, China ranked 63rd, one slot behind Namibia and tied with Bolivia. Only 80 countries offer Chinese passport holders visa-free access. The bottom three were Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
South Africa said on Wednesday that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend a summit of the BRICS nations in August, ending months of speculation about whether the country would arrest him on an international warrant. South Africa's presidential office said in a statement that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will be at the Johannesburg summit on August 22nd to 24th instead of Putin, alongside the leaders of Brazil, India, China, and South Africa. The Kremlin said Putin would dial into the BRICS summit by video call.
The ICC's arrest warrant for Putin accuses him of the war crime of illegally deporting children from Ukraine. A court filing made public on Tuesday showed South African President Cyril Ramaphosa had asked permission from the ICC not to arrest Putin because doing so would amount to a declaration of war and potentially scupper African efforts to end the war in Ukraine. The announcement followed consultations on Tuesday night between Ramaphosa and leaders of political parties from the BRICS.
The Financial Times reported that on Tuesday, citing several anonymous sources familiar with the matter, Saudi Arabia and Turkey are hoping to broker a deal to return Ukrainian children taken to Russia since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The Financial Times also said that discussions have been ongoing for several months as Kyiv and Moscow are compiling lists of children held by Russia. Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, who has previously mediated negotiations as Putin's unofficial emissary to Ukraine, is also reportedly involved in the talks.
We must look at this from the perspective of history. So it's nothing new.
According to the recent report, Saudi Arabia raised the issue of displaced children at a G20 meeting in June. However, the talks have been further complicated by the different ways and circumstances in which Ukrainian children have arrived in Russia, with some facing forced deportation while others were taken by pro-Russian relatives. A group of activists called Kidnapping has identified nearly 1,400 locations inside Russia where Ukrainian children were likely transferred. Russia has returned 371 children as of June 2023.
The Biden administration formally halted the Wuhan Institute of Virologists' access to U.S. funding, citing unanswered safety and security questions for the facility at the center of the COVID lab leak theory, according to a memo obtained by Bloomberg News. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services notified the institute about the suspension on Monday and told the lab it's seeking to cut it off permanently. The lab hasn't obtained new funding from the U.S. National Institutes of Health since July 2020.
An HHS review that started in September raised concern that the facility based in Wuhan, where COVID first emerged, was violating biosafety protocols and wasn't complying with U.S. regulations. The penalties are the most drastic action the U.S. has taken over the lab's failure to share information amid ongoing investigations into COVID's origins. The Wuhan Institute of Virology has received more than $1.4 million in federal awards, including through subgrants from the National Institutes of Health, since 2014.
Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger met with Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu in Beijing on Tuesday, his first known visit to the capital city in 4 years. According to a readout of the Chinese Defense Ministry, Kissinger was cited as saying, "If history is of any guide, neither the U.S. nor China can afford the price of treating each other as enemies." Li said the country hopes to work with the U.S. for a healthy and stable relationship between the two nations and militaries.
Kissinger's visit comes as Beijing manages diplomatic relations with the Biden administration and tries to restore confidence among foreign firms deterred by escalating tensions. In June, Kissinger sounded a downbeat tone on the state of ties between Washington and Beijing. Kissinger said in an interview with Bloomberg News editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite, military conflict between China and Taiwan is likely if tensions continue on their current course.
Bloomberg reported, according to a senior Indian government official, that Indonesia and India are planning to settle bilateral transactions in local currencies and link up their fast payment systems to spur cross-border fund transfers. The official said that India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and her Indian counterpart Sri Milyani Indrawati discussed the proposals ahead of meetings among the G20 countries in India. The talks were preliminary, and an announcement could come once officials complete formalities.
Indrawati told Bloomberg in an interview that Indonesia wants to work with India to shield against the impact of China's lackluster performance. Countries like Indonesia are tying up with India given its fast-growing economy and hunger for food commodities. The proposed agreement with Indonesia comes as India inked similar pacts with the United Arab Emirates over the weekend, which will see more trades done in rupees and dirhams and allows for domestic credit cards in processing retail transactions.
A mudslide in central Colombia killed at least 15 people. Officials said on Tuesday the landslide, which blocked a major highway that connects Bogota to the country's eastern plains, was unleashed by heavy rainfalls that flooded 3 streams. The landslide took down several homes in Cuetami, a municipality 62 kilometers southeast of Bogota. It also swept over a toll booth and tore down a bridge on the Bogota-Villavicencio highway. Many homes built along the hillsides close to the rivers were affected.
Colombia President Gustavo Petro gave his condolences and tweeted that the disaster demonstrates that there is an imperative need for local officials to plan urban areas more rigorously. The mudslide will disrupt commerce between eastern Colombia and Bogota, which is a key transit route for beef, rice, and palm oil. The monsoon season in Colombia, which started in June, usually lasts until November. Last year, seasonal flooding left some 300 people dead overall.
Hong Kong authorities have proposed that programs about the correct understanding of the national security law be exempt from an impartiality clause requiring even-handedness when opposing points of view are presented. In a public consultation document released on Monday evening, the Communications Authority said it had considered licenses concerns that programs meant to engender a correct sense of national identity could give rise to complaints that no opposing views had been included.
The document added that including programs that objected to the national security law, just for the sake of observing the impartiality requirement, could amount to a breach of the security legislation. It read as such, there is a case to stipulate explicitly that the impartiality requirement is not applicable to such programs to facilitate the operation of the licensees. Members of the public were invited to give their views on the proposals by making written submissions to the authority's Wan Chai office on or before August 16 this year.
Now let's delve into the news of Taiwan's passport. Number 1, in terms of 在什么方面 the data is limited in terms of both quality and quantity. Number 2, access 使用或见到什么的机会权利 Students must have access to good resources. Number 3, extent 程度限度 To a certain extent, we are all responsible for this tragic situation. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comment section. The correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune in to Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.